And so I'm Sophie Gripenberg. I'm a part of ECOnGOOD International, and I'm your moderator today for this ECOnGOOD conversation for this seminar. We're going to talk about cooperatives and the economy for common good and the balance sheet process. We had 69 people registered for this conversation today, which is very exciting to see that so many people have a big interest in this. Please make sure that your mic is turned off so no one gets disturbed while talking. If your camera can be on, that's great. It's always nice to see who's here in the room. And yeah, we're going to talk for about 1 hour, so it's great to have you all here. And there's going definitely to be time for some questions towards the end. But let's kick this seminar going. I have two prominent panelists, speakers with me, and I feel like I have to read their bios because they're so extensive, and both of them are really great people. So we have Cathy. Maybe Cathy, you can say hello, like just wink your hand and say that so people can see who you are, which is an outreach specialist for the International Center for Cooperative Management at St. Mary's University, and supporter for the Cooperative Development Foundation at the National Cooperative Business Association, CLUSA International, on projects including the Cooperative Leaders and Scholar Program. That's quite impressive, Cathy, and it's great to have you here. I know you're based in the US. And then we have Ingrid. Ingrid, maybe you can say hello. There you are. So Ingrid Rasmussen, a pharmaceutical chemist and quality management consultant that co-directs Cooperativa Entre Biojotos, men, a biotech cooperative that develops bio preparations for industries, agriculture sector, and households used through the sustainability and circular economy. It's really great to have you here, Ingrid, and I've been trying to practice my Spanish to pronounce the cooperation in the right way. It's great to have you both here with us today, and I think we're going to give the floor to Cathy now, who's going to open up and talk about cooperatives more in general terms. So the floor is yours, Cathy.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm speaking to you from Co-op Week in Washington, D.C. So this is the week every year where the National Cooperative Business Association hosts its Co-op Impact Conference here in our nation's capital. It's more important than ever to be convening cooperatives in a very interesting time here in the US. So I wanted to share with you today a little bit about cooperatives in a more general sense. I know some of you may be very well established in cooperative spaces, very familiar leading, governing members of, but perhaps not all who are either here today or listen to this recording in the future are familiar with the cooperative business model. And so I wanted to give a level set, recognizing it's coming again from a US perspective, to just make sure folks have some baseline of knowledge and information. So I also have found that sometimes having the basics reminded, reminding yourself of the basics helps give you a language or a way of talking about cooperatives to others who may be less familiar in your own spaces. So I look at this kind of opportunity to also be a bit of a training in how to be a good ambassador for co-ops for people from all levels of understanding, right? So that's why I'm calling it kind of a level setting. So I thought I would introduce myself a little bit because this is part of my co-op story. It's a kind of a lengthy list of organizations, but what happened is I worked for the same organization for 30 years. And it was an organization I'd grown up in called the Wisconsin Farmers Union. And the Farmers Union is a family farm advocacy organization in the US with a history of quite progressive ideals and action and cooperative development. So the picture you see in the corner is me as a very young person attending one of many co-op meetings with my family, because I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and we were very involved in cooperatives. And the mug I'm holding for Cenex is the fuel brand of our nation's largest cooperative, CHS. So after all of that work, I then moved abroad to Poland. I lived in Wrocław for a year with my husband, briefly in Morocco. And during that time, pivoted to doing more remote education work in cooperatives and connected with all of these organizations you see here that I had been involved with in my previous work with the Farmers Union, and was able to practice, those of you who know the International Co-op Alliance principles, to practice P5 through P6, that is to say, education through working together with multiple cooperatives. So in the time we have today, I'm going to return to this elephant. But my time in this work brought me, much to my joy, to the International Cooperative Alliance's Global Co-op Conference last November in New Delhi. And that was a really amazing opportunity to see the global cooperative space together to launch this International Year of Cooperatives. So what I thought I would do for us today is give a little bit of background on the International Co-op Alliance and the basics of cooperatives, a little bit about cooperatives' power and purpose, and then I'm going to come back to the elephant, because it's one of the elements of elements. The elephant is an element of what I see as a real challenge, an opportunity in cooperatives today. So I wanted to share just a couple of brief sort of data points about cooperatives, because I think sometimes if folks are unfamiliar with them, they think they're rather small, kind of niche or boutique kind of companies, and they really have a pretty significant global presence, right? At least 12% of people on the planet, 3 million different types of cooperatives, 10% of folks are employed in the space, and a very significant, significant in the sense that it's not peanuts in terms of the turnover of the services, the infrastructure, the goods, the employment, all the things that are needed in our society. Co-ops are there and serving those. So a bit of background now on this international year. The United Nations General Assembly decided, with the encouragement of the cooperative space globally, to recognize this year as one to lift up, to celebrate, to advance cooperatives, particularly in their role in helping to reach the SDGs. So, like, how do we position cooperatives as real contributors to motivators toward the Sustainable Development Goals? And for folks who've been around cooperatives for a while, you might remember that there was an international year back in 2012 as well. So this was a chance for us to build on some of that excitement and success. This is the definition the International Cooperative Alliance uses, and it's quite wordy, right? And so I often will break it down in this way, identifying key elements of the definition to help people get their heads around it a bit. Right, so we see a few points in bold around an autonomous association of persons. They get together voluntarily. They have something in common that might be economic, but it could also be social and or cultural. What they have in common could be needs. They could also be aspirations, how they want their community to be, how they'd like the world to be. And how do they do it? Well, they get together. They have something that's jointly owned. It's democratically controlled. And it's an enterprise. And this kind of spread of points is still a lot to think about. So I often narrow it down even one more step to this. The two elements in bold, right? An autonomous association of persons and an enterprise. That is the sort of beauty of the cooperative space, and sometimes what makes it most difficult for folks to get their heads around, right? It is both business and association, if you will. But I think that it's kind of a happy accident that the definition happens to structure the words in this way, because what is at the base? The enterprise, right? Cooperatives have a business purpose, right? They are involved economically as a business, and yet what is at the top? At the top of the definition are the people. So it reminds us that in cooperatives, the business is foundational to doing all of those things that the people at the top, who are the most important, who are the priority in the business, need. So I think that that's a kind of a helpful way to think about cooperatives a bit differently. and break it down a little bit more clearly. Now, the Cooperative Alliance has these principles that come from a long lineage going back to the mid-1800s out of the Industrial Revolution. Of course, cooperatives have been in existence long before that and have been present through cooperativism, right? Mutual self-help, mutual aid, all of those things have been present in our communities and cultures from time immemorial. And in the mid 1800s, this notion of sort of rules around what happens with the money, how does governance work, why do we educate, all of those things started to coalesce, and then were sort of codified, if you will, by the International Cooperative Alliance. And these today have been revised about once every generation to bring us to a sort of global understanding of how we might think about and talk about cooperatives. And folks often say that sort of the first three or four are sort of relate to the operational side, and then the later ones refer a little bit more to the associational side, yeah? But cooperation among cooperatives is a really key one for this international year. Why? Because cooperation among cooperatives doesn't just mean sort of business to business, like, oh, you should, buy from other co-ops if you're a co-op. It also has to do with the power of associations, right? And we see that when we look at just one model from one sector, the credit union space, right, which refers to this sort of graphic as their onion, right? If you peel away the layers, at the base, you have a member. They belong to a cooperative directly. That co-op then successively belongs to other organizations, all the way up to a global entity to help cooperatives meet those member needs down in the core, right? To advocate, to support, to develop, to fund, and importantly, to educate. Education is a principle that comes all the way from those rules established in Rochdale, for those of you who know that sort of co-op, modern co-op sector origin story, that education has been one of those elements of the principles all the way from then to the present. And so it's working together. How do we advance the needs of all people in cooperatives by these sort of robust networks and connections, right? So this is a really important part of the cooperative space. From a US context, what that means is that all of these large sector organizations belong to the International Cooperative Alliance, right? So that first example I shared was from the credit union space in the US, but it's also our cross-sectoral organization, NCBA-CLUSA, the folks in natural foods groceries, the folks in the rural electric cooperatives. And incidentally, I will mention, because sometimes folks are surprised to learn that the rural electric cooperative system actually gives electricity to over half of the United States of America's landmass. Not half its population, but half of its geography. Why? Because the investor-owned utilities straight up refused to serve the rural parts of America because it was going to cost them too much and it wouldn't create any benefit or profit for their shareholders. So the farmers and the rural people had to come together and build that system themselves. And today, again, over half of the country is actually powered by member-owned rural electric cooperatives. We see the cooperative purpose also in our mutual insurance companies and in our National Cooperative Bank, which helps to fund a lot of our cooperative sector. The principles are not the only part of the cooperative identity, though. When we talk about the cooperative identity, it includes a definition and it includes a principle, but it also includes these values. And here is a space that I think we really can lean into during these times, right? These are elements that are sometimes co-opted by other kinds of business, right? But are really core to who cooperatives are around self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity, and then these ethical values around openness, honesty, social responsibility, and caring for others. These are things that are present in our cooperative spaces, or should be, and we need to be reminded of them, reminded of this identity document, so that we can be sure that we're sort of holding up what cooperatives are intended to be. I want to share one other quick definition that we sometimes use, and that is that there are kind of three elements to cooperatives primarily, right? That there's some business that has users who want to take advantage of those products, services, or employment. But that group of users, they own, they control, and they benefit from that business, right? And this is a kind of a simplified way to think about the difference in the cooperative model, right? The folks that need to use that product, service, or have that employment own the business, they control it, typically democratically, one member, one vote, and the benefit is based not on investment, but on participation, right? On the basis of use, or what we sometimes call patronage in the co-op space, right? So that's a really different way than sort of traditional business would structure. I want to say just a quick word about governance too, because this is also a little bit different for cooperatives. I think about it sometimes as the face of a clock, right? This particular graphic is tilted a bit, but if you consider the members at 12 o'clock, right? The most important, right? The association of persons at the top of our definition, who then elect a board of directors. Those board members typically must be members, users of the cooperative, that those folks hire the management hires the employees. But rather than perhaps a more linear kind of structure that we might see in other types of business, this one circles back to the owners, right, to the members. And so that's also helpful in a way, I think, to think about how cooperatives might be different. I'm going to take a really quick look now at power and purpose in cooperatives. So in other words, who are those members and what purpose, what need do they seek to meet in building the cooperative? So a kind of, again, a simplified way of thinking about this. Co-ops help their members earn more, save and serve more, control more, share more, and include more. And those are sort of the big categories we often use in the US to identify those different types. Now, some of these brands are not going to be familiar to our international audience, but they are very familiar to folks in the US context because these are, many of them, major food companies, right? So these are examples of the producer co-ops where the folks have come together because they want to earn more for something they produce. We see many early marketing cooperatives in the late 1800s. Think about the time for refrigeration. If you produce dairy or citrus, something perishable, you had to come together and sell it as a group to basically fight back against the railroads, the monopolies, the bankers that were, trying to extract as much value from rural America for those kind of captains of industry, right? So all of these cooperatives are examples of the producer side where folks are looking to earn more together. Then there is the opposite side of that economic equation, right? Folks who want to save more. Here's where we see our retail type co-ops and our service co-ops, everything from credit unions to housing cooperatives to rural electricity. I point out GenX at the bottom of the screen is an international firm that provides the first AI. I always say in the agricultural community, we've known about AI for a long time, but it wasn't artificial intelligence, it was artificial insemination. That's how most of our agriculture space breeding happens nowadays. And in the US, at least, it's primarily done through farmer cooperatives. So there's a whole space there where folks are looking to save money by coming together. Then purchasing and shared services co-ops might be small businesses that come together in order for these independent businesses to be able to take advantage of perhaps marketing together, having a national brand identity, having back office support, employee benefits, things like that. Ace Hardware, I know, can be found around the world, and its owners are all of those independent hardware stores that have come together in a model that is not a franchise, but is a cooperative. And there are many more there. And I'm sure that in other contexts and countries, there are other examples there as well. Control is around that worker co-op space. And this I know is very active in many other places around the globe. Here are just a few examples from a US context. A taxi cab company that's owned by its workers, its drivers, home care services, cleaning services, and then in more engineering and manufacturing. These are from sort of basic services to very high tech. You can find these spaces where the workers are in charge and in control. And then you can have examples where those mix and mingle, right? Where you might have more than one of those stakeholders come together. In the grocery co-op space in the US, for example, there's a lot of conversation about that's great that the consumers, right, the shoppers have control. But what about those workers, right? Do we have a sense of their identity and their opportunity to participate in decision making? And so some folks are looking at putting those two groups together in their membership. Now, as I conclude, I want to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. There's a great folk story about folks who can't see, and they encounter an elephant, and the only way they can figure out what it is to reach out and touch it. And of course, what happens is they all experience something different. Well, the original version of this story relates to theology, but I think it also applies to the cooperative space, because what happens, we all encounter cooperatives in our own independent ways. And if we're, the average person that's not necessarily, thinking about the cooperative space, educated in the cooperative space, we might think a co-op is one of a number of different things, right? A power company, an apartment building, a grocery store, a financial institution, an agricultural business. So what I challenge us in cooperatives, and I think even folks who are interested in cooperatives to do, is to think about explaining it by talking about the business model first, right? A type of business where folks who need a thing come together to own it, control it, and benefit from it together. And then say, in my sector, what that looks like is folks who come together to purchase more affordable housing, is farmers who came together to buy feed, seed, and fertilizer as they were transitioning from horses to tractors, right? As rural folks who couldn't get power because the investor-owned utilities refused to serve the rural places, right? It's a way of us framing what it means to be a cooperative in a general, broad way so that everyone can see the model first and then see the ways in which it contributes to our society and economy. So we have a great few months to celebrate this International Year, to carry that energy forward. And now we'll hear a little bit deeper dive into cooperative spaces. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That was very, very interesting, and I feel like I'm already burning with a lot of questions. Please, everyone, I see that some people who started to introduce themselves in the chat. Feel free to do so, so we know who's in the room. It's really nice to know. And I'm going to give the word to you, Ingrid. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Cathy, for explaining and introducing the value of cooperatives. Not only introducing, but an excellent explanation. Thank you very much. So I will not have to do it. Thank you. So we will talk about the strengthening through the three models that we work. It's cooperativism, the ECOnGOOD, and circular economy. Next, please. So let me begin by introducing our cooperative. It's called Entre Bichitos. I don't know if you can share it.
I think, Roll, you're looking to open it in a different program, right?
Oh.
See if it looks better.
Yes, good. Well, Entre Bichitos was born in Uruguay, driven by the desire to respond to environmental challenges using knowledge and biotechnology. We are a worker cooperative, and so what means this? Because there are different types of cooperatives. A worker cooperative is that the ownership and decisions are shared by those who work in the organization. And our core technology is the MEN, or MEN, we call it MEN, but I will call it MEN so you don't think it's about man or men. So they are native efficient microorganisms. And what are these MEN? These microorganismos eficientes nativos. This is in Spanish. So, or native efficient microorganisms. These are not imported, not genetically modified. They are local microbial communities that are collected by soil, water, and air in our environment. Since then come from nature itself, they are highly adapted, safe, and sustainable. The idea, next please. The idea behind MEN actually came from a school project in a very, very vulnerable neighborhood in Montevideo. one of our founders, the teacher Federico, was working with his students on practical biology, and after losing access to the Japanese EM, I think Japan is here in this conference also, no? Because perhaps you know this technology, efficient microorganism. So Japanese, we lose the access to this technology. So one student raised a powerful question, and she said, if microorganisms are everywhere, why don't we go and catch them, no? And so where entrevichitos truly began combining curiosity, science, and love for our local ecosystems. Please, next one. Oh, this is what I was telling. Why don't we go and capture the microorganism was the question. So we began to study the soil and the water and see a combination of this microorganism to see if we could reach what the Japanese had done. Okay, next one. Well, this is where our MEN culture is very diverse. We are talking about lactic acid bacteria, yeast, actinomycetes, and fungi, all naturally working together so to regenerate soils, clean water, and support life. These microorganisms are already part of our daily life in food, in bread, in beer. So these are very friendly microorganisms. And our purpose, next one, our mission goes beyond making and selling products. We aim to regenerate ecosystems, promote healthy and sustainable food production, and contribute to building a fair and circular economy. This is our way to contribution to common good. Okay, and our activities is to fulfill this mission is to engage in 4 main activities: research, development, applying biotechnology in agriculture and sanitation, and restoring natural water system, working alongside with communities, institutions, and companies. Next one. This is what I was saying. Next one. Objectives about the synergy between cooperativism, the common good, and circular economy. We think together they can help us to rethink what success means beyond profit towards sustainability and social impact. Next one. Here there are the 7 principles of cooperativism that Cathy has also speaking about it. Cooperativism gives us ethical and practical foundation for how we work together. So voluntary membership, democratic control, equitative economy participation. So these are the 7 principles of the cooperativism. Next one. So we will compare it with the values of the ECOnGOOD, the economy of common good, or ECG, brings us a new language to economic practice. It centers human dignity, solidarity, social justice, ecological sustainability, and democratic participation. These values expand the vision of cooperativism by adding deeper reflections and global connection. What we are doing today, no? Next one, the ECG has also principles. The ECG challenge us, so Ente Bichitos, to ask ourselves, is our work truly contributing to the common good? Because perhaps we think inside, oh, we are fantastic, but is it really contributing to common good? And how can we measure the success, not only by financial profit or by social environment, but also by social and environmental impact? So this, the ECOnGOOD has invited us to cooperate instead of compete, and to ensure fair distribution of wealth. And so, next one, what's the alignment between the two models? So, when we look closely, the alignment is very strong between cooperativism and ECOnGOOD. Okay, both models value democracy, transparency, collective responsibility. The ECOnGOOD gives cooperatives a mirror to examine how well we are living and our principles and where we can go further. The next one is also because we are working in a place that we are different cooperatives that work with circular economy, and it's our third pillar. It's the circular economy. We design products and systems that minimize waste, reuse resources, and regenerate life. It's not just about recycling, but it's about building systems that close loops and serve ecosystems. Next one, it comes, I think, a table. Next one, please, Raul. Also, I will not read everything because time is running. So this is a table that offers, if you keep the presentation, you can see it. This offers a powerful way to visualize the shared DNA between these three models. These frameworks to guide our work is covered circular economy. Okay, go ahead. Yes, we are the first company that we have done the common good balance, and so what this ECOnGOOD balance contributed to us, it gave us a clear picture of our strengths and areas for improvement. If you have a model that you can compare what you are doing at what we wanted this model of ECOnGOOD, go ahead. And so it helped us to reflect deeply on how we relate our community, our partners, and the planet. And it confirmed that our deepest purpose is not economic, it's ethical. Okay? And the next one is the challenges and opportunities for cooperativism. It's that ECOnGOOD also raises the bar It makes with the balance, with a common good balance, it's making also questions that you didn't think about them, and it encourage us to deep democracy, no, build more meaningful partnerships and think more holistic. It challenge us to be bolder, not fair with the corporate, but active co-makers of the society. And the conclusion of this one is that combining these three models, cooperativism, ECOnGOOD, and circular economy, has made us stronger. It gives us clarity, coherence, and connections. We believe this is a path for all cooperatives, and we have the honor to walk with others who care the earth and for people, the social ones. So this is my presentation. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. We say it in Spanish, and thank you really for being part of this movement that places people and planet in the heart of economy.
Muchas gracias, Ingrid. That was amazing. And not only do you have like a circular economy, sustainable idea working with microorganisms, you're also cooperative and you are contributing to the economy for common good through the balance sheet. I think the common good is all over you, it's in the DNA. So it's very impressive. Thank you so much, Ingrid. I find that very inspiring. So both Ingrid and Cathy. Cathy, you mentioned, was it 3 million cooperatives around the world, 12.5 of the working force? Often this idea of cooperatives is presented as maybe something new, like a part of the new economy, but it's something very old. I think the first one was created 1844, something like that. So I would like to hear both of your reflections on when this is actually such a big part of our global economy and has been there for many, many years. Why is it not more known or practiced, or why is it considered as something new when it's actually something it's an old idea? I don't know, maybe Cathy, you can start, and Ingrid, you can go next.
Sure. I will I will say too, often noted as a marker in the timeline of the beginning of the modern cooperative movement. But there were many cooperatives, actually business cooperatives organized before Rochdale, but not all of them were successful. They weren't all able to sustain themselves. And it was those rules that called them the rule, the Rochdale equitable pioneers. Today we call them right? Because what had happened is that many cooperatives had sort of charitied themselves right out of business, right? They were groups of friends and neighbors and coworkers, and they wanted to give each other some grace and extend, credit. Well, if you can't pay today, right? Many of them were modest income or poor working people. If you can't pay today, you can pay tomorrow. Well, that didn't work so well when not everybody could afford to pay their bill and pay their tab, if you will. So it was. They are much older, and there are examples even in the U.S. Benjamin Franklin, right, who's known as a kind of a leader in the early creation of the United States. He started the first mutual fire insurance company long before Rochdale, right? So there are lots of examples. We point to that one as distinctive, but I don't mean to go on. Forgive me. But I think it's really, part of it is that juxtaposition between business and association. That it's hard for people who have been trained in thinking about business in only a certain way to sort of get their head around what it means to be a cooperative, right? And so because they are so diverse in their typology, I think, and because they're not talked about in business education programs, which I am constantly surprised by, like, how can we have some very significantly sized companies that are not recognized in the business education literature. But I think it comes down in part to the fact that they don't benefit people who already have a lot of money typically. And so when the business schools are being endowed, when money is coming in, at least in the US context, to, support professors and just support research and the case studies, they're not putting the money in that business model because it's not a model that's designed to make money for others. So I think that one of the ways that we advance understanding of cooperatives is that point I made at the end of my presentation, that we as folks who use the co-op model in all kinds of ways have to do a better job of explaining about all the types together, right? So not just focusing on our sectors when we have a chance to talk to media or policy leaders or the general public, but to help people see that it is this broad spectrum that helps lots of folks at lots of levels. And this might be helpful in some contexts to say, yes, it can be anti-capitalist. It can be seen as an alternative to capitalism. It can be seen as something that exists within capitalism. I mean, this is kind of the tension that we see, at least in the US, at a time that's so divisive, that actually co-ops do exist across the political spectrum. Many of those agricultural and rural electric cooperatives are quite conservative politically, right? Because of their demographic group. And yet, they're deeply committed to their co-ops. So there's a lesson there that we can, I think, build upon. Like, what is that core that we should be communicating better, right? Around the democracy piece, right? Around the voice and dignity and control piece that goes beyond all of the excellent other things, right, that we do. But when we think about how do we actually get the word out to more people, sometimes it means speaking a language they understand, right? And that might be different depending on your audience. But that model part is what unites us, even if the movements, right, that support it are diverse.
Thank you, Cathy. Ingrid, what are your thoughts
you.
based on my
Thank
question, what
you.
Cathy said? Yes.
Well, I think that there are many different cooperatives. There are consumer cooperatives that they own these different services and goods, or producer cooperatives that they own by these cooperatives, it's by suppliers or artisans. Or like us, these are the worker cooperatives. That means that the worker themselves join in a cooperative. And there are many different cooperative, credit cooperative, that the owners are the ones who give the money with these principles and root these ethics and rules and I don't know why to belong to a cooperative. What brings us, also what Cathy explained, it's typical because every member has one vote. It's very democratic, members can benefit if you have an access benefit by buying the resources and better pricing because of collective purchasing. Yes, why to belong to a cooperative? You have to live it. You have good people to make. It's not easy. I think it's not easy to make a cooperative, but it has its own rules, like ECOnGOOD. No, it has its own rules, and then it makes it easier.
Thank you, Ingrid, for sharing those reflections. I'm also part of a board of a cooperative bank, and I can definitely say it's not always easy with cooperatives, but I've also read studies saying they are more resilient also in terms of market fluctuations and so on. I think I have several questions, but I really want to give, I'm sure there are many of you in the audience. If you feel comfortable, you can use the reaction and raise your hand, or you can do like this if you don't find it on the Zoom. If you're not comfortable to speak up, you can also put your question in the chat. We will focus on questions now. So is there anyone who has any kind of questions for Ingrid or Cathy, or maybe both? No burning questions, because then I have more but you can also write them in the chat if you.
Well, if I may, Sophie, I did see a kind of a question in the chat.
Yes, you did.
Embedded
Yeah.
in Dennis's comment just a moment
Yeah.
ago. What are the next steps to increase the popularity?
Yeah.
Instead of pushing money to investors. I mean, one of the things I think we can make a case for cooperatives is that they aren't just another nonprofit, right? They're not just another charity. They are actually economic development, right? And I think that part of the importance of educating all kinds of people about cooperatives is that it is a way for folks to actually generate economic activity, right? Instead of just a handout, right? Instead of us helping them, right? It's us helping ourselves through a business, right? And I think for some people, that language of business might actually be the way that you get them, right? So it's not so much for some audiences, not all, right? It's not so much like, well, we're not that kind of business, we're this kind of business. It might actually be, well, we're not just another charity, right, that's seeking to impose our help, right, on this group. It's actually us, the group, taking control ourselves and solving it together. And yes, we might need some support, some funding, some finance to do that. But it sort of shifts, right, from not a different kind of business, but actually a way for people to engage in helping themselves economically while also fulfilling all of these community needs and goals. I'm not sure, Dennis, if that gets to your point, but that's a way of kind of shifting the way we think about them.
Thank you, Cathy.
Definitely a good answer to it. Thank you. But yeah, the investors are definitely not ready to. Maybe it needs some more communities, and yeah, cooperatives can take a part in creating those. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I see Marcus raising his hand, so I will. The floor is yours. Please ask your question.
Thank you. It's about, I'm a member of cooperatives more or less my whole life. So being at a housing cooperative and being at a bank and participating in it never worked really in one. But I also see, and that's maybe the downside that I would like to put in the room, these cooperatives that have been grown so big that they become like, monopolists almost. I've lived in New Zealand, and it's a small country, but its main products are dairy and fruit, and they are all cooperatives. And it sounds so great, but if you see how they not live this part that Ingrid was pointing to, it's just benefiting themselves, and themselves seems to be an in-group. And so how do you work around this tension that is obviously there?
It's a great question. I come from an agricultural cooperative perspective historically, right? I grew up on a dairy farm, and it is a very interesting question. What happens when you're sort of a victim of your own success, right? Those cooperatives were designed to, frankly, what is the need that's being met? To keep farmers in business, which meant income, which then by extension became, well, that means we have to participate in the global economy. It means we have to move this product. It means we need to deliver money back to rural America, or in your case, rural New Zealand, perhaps, right? So, but what happens along the way? There's a lot of conversation in the cooperative education space around this notion of isomorphism, right? What happens when a cooperative emphasizes the business part so much that they start to move toward and look like any other kind of business in their goals to reach these economic benefits for their members? And it's a good question. It's a fair one. Carrie Jacobs, who does a lot of work in the ag econ space in the US, she said recently at a conference, how do we make the case to the next generation of cooperators of the importance of a co-op when they've never known the market without it? Like, yes, they're big and they're doing all these things. And what would those places look like if those co-ops weren't there? So it's not an easy question. I think that continuous education, I think getting those folks from some of those more traditional co-op spaces out into other co-op spaces to meet people from worker co-ops, consumer co-ops, et cetera, helps give them a framework. And I think to do that sooner, right, to help introduce cooperative people to each other early in their careers. So as they advance, they see their work through that lens of a broader cross-sectoral cooperative effort, and not just how do I make the most money, for our farmer members. But it's a fair question, and I don't have a great answer to it. It's something we see in the US as well with our large traditional commodity ag co-ops. Some question, are they really co-ops anymore? I think that's a very good question. And I also think, what would these rural spaces look like if they weren't there? A lot of that value, right, that resource would have been extracted years and years ago. So it's a tricky one.
Thank you. It's really helping me.
Yes, I think that the new generations in this cooperative will have to have the principles and the values. I think new generations have to do it. It's by us, it's the same.
Thank you, Ingrid. I think you in your presentation give really good examples of, by using the economy for the common good, the balance sheet process, you are also available to evaluate not only a co-determination and transparency, which is a big part of the cooperative model, but also based on specifically environmental sustainability, for example, to bring that core aspect into businesses. But we have some questions in the chat, and I see your hand, Jacqueline, and we will try to do both. But one question was actually a little bit related, maybe an answer to Marcus' concerns, that Jutta, you wrote about size, for example. So maybe Catherine, Ingrid, you can comment on that. Like, is size a big part of how we make the cooperatives more democratic, more social, ecologically driven, value-oriented? What role does size play here?
Yes.
I'll jump in there quick. Or Ingrid, do you want to go first?
No.
Okay, so
please,
I'll share.
You are the doctor here.
No, not at all. Not at all. I have 2 points. One, just the range of size. I mean, in Wisconsin, in the state of Wisconsin, where I'm from, because in the US, our statute about cooperatives is all at the state level. There's no federal co-op statute, incidentally, which creates a very interesting dynamic from a policy perspective. The smallest co-op is 3 people. Right, so there is a co-op in Wisconsin, or at least there was. I'm not sure if they're still there. A worker co-op who existed to repair fine stringed instruments. Yeah, so the chamber orchestras of the Midwest of the U.S., they all send their violins and their violas and their cellos to these people when they have to make a repair. Okay, 3 people. Now, IFCO, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Co-op, right, which is one of the biggest. They're a federated co-op structure, meaning they have the individual farmers belong to their local co-ops. The local co-ops belong to IFCO. Yeah, IFCO has 35,000 member co-ops, not members, member co-ops. Those 35,000 member co-ops are owned by 50 million Indian farmers. What do you do with such a range, right? It's hard to get your head around it. So I think, are they both successful co-ops? But I think something that people are experimenting with now, there's a great example in the US, in Colorado, of Namaste Solar, which is a renewable energy co-op, worker co-op. But instead of them getting bigger and bigger, they are constantly spinning off new co-ops, right? So their purpose is to create more of this kind of federated structure where there's lots of small co-ops that are working together to gain greater efficiencies, but they're keeping the member size of each co-op smaller to keep that democratic emphasis. That's a very interesting way to think about how we develop co-ops going forward.
Thank you, Cathy. That was very inspiring. Ingrid, please go ahead if you want to comment on the idea of size.
to comment, we are a little cooperative. We are 5 and 9 workers, you know. But if the cooperative is a little bit not so big, you know, what the advantage is that we have closer relationships between us. We are very flexible. We have a greater member participation. We are always communicating, and of course, lower administrative prices, but it's very difficult for us to be in every part, you know. So producing and so perhaps the bigger cooperatives, it's easier for them to buy resources and to have a people to be in everywhere. No, this is the advantage and disadvantage.
Thank you, Ingrid. I'm going to allow us to spend a few more minutes. So if anyone needs to go now, we completely understand. Please say your goodbyes in the chat. But I really want Jacqueline to have the opportunity to ask her question, and then we end up with some final words. So if you can stay for another 5 minutes, that would be great. Please, Jacqueline, go ahead. Now you're muted again. Yeah, you unmuted, but it went back.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Jacqueline Hofstede from the Netherlands and a Common Good entrepreneur. We work on the area cooperation, but that is, well, it is in the beginning. My question is about the economy for the common good. The Common Good balance sheet have helped the corporate of Ingrid Rasmussen, I understand, to become more better for the common good. I wondered if the corporate form can help ECG companies. So the other way around, and perhaps there are examples of ECG companies somewhere working together in a cooperative form. I don't know, but perhaps one of you does know.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jacqueline. It's maybe for those of you who are not as familiar with ECOnGOOD or the Economy for Common Good and the balance sheet, it's a process that any company, organization, or business can do to evaluate to what extent they're contributing to the economy for common good. And so far, more than 1,300 businesses and organizations has done this process. And we do know that many of them are cooperatives, but many are not. Like you pointed out, Jacqueline, some people are not. So Ingrid, Cathy, what do you think about, what does ECOnGOOD has to offer cooperatives, or might there be ECOnGOOD companies who maybe should learn from being a cooperative business the other way around, right, Jacqueline? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean the working together from different common good companies. So not with the same goal, but perhaps different goals, but because they are in a region, common good company, they work together in the region. I thought, sometimes I've heard something about working together in the area of the Bodensee, but not more than that. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I can share one example. It might not be quite what you're getting at, Jacqueline, but I think it's an example. And then Ingrid, I'm sure, has more from the local context. There is a relatively new co-op here. It was actually founded in Washington, D.C. By nonprofits and faith communities, because in this area of Washington, D.C., it's very expensive. Yeah. And one church said, oh my gosh, we're paying more to plow our snow every year than we are paying our pastor, our minister. Yeah. So they said, maybe other churches are having this same problem. Mm-hmm. Well, all of these nonprofits and faith community organizations came together. They now have Community Purchasing Alliance. And they use this cooperative to negotiate for lawn care, snow removal, business technologies, maintenance, janitorial services. Yeah, so something quite simple. But by coming together, they can now negotiate as a much larger group for lower price contracts. And it saves a lot of that, the time of those small, modestly resourced organizations. Maybe they don't have a very big staff or just some part-time staff. And instead of them having to spend so much time, how do I have to make all these phone calls to find the most affordable, vendor for this or for that? The co-op can do it for them. And that's been very successful, and it's growing now in other communities. So it's one example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Well, perhaps one of the principles of cooperativism, it says it emphasizes that one member, one vote. It doesn't depend of the if you are employee, user, or producer. It's one member, one vote. And so in a cooperative model, you have the profits, they are distributed not about the investment, but between the people who work there. No, it doesn't depend on if you have invest or not. It is distributed between the people who work there. They are very, very common with ECOnGOOD values. No, I think it's easy for ECOnGOOD companies to be a cooperative between the ethical values. No.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ingrid, so much for building that bridge also between the two thematic themes that we have today, economy for common good and cooperatives. What are the similarities? What are the differences? How can they complement each other? What are their role for a new economic system? Cooperatives still being a very big part of our economic system already. And ECOnGOOD also being another pioneering model that more and more companies are using. I want to thank you all, especially Cathy, especially Ingrid. If you want to say any last words, a sentence or so, I'll give you the floor. But otherwise, I will have to end this session now, being 5 minutes late, and just thank you all. But please, yes, Cathy and Ingrid,
yes, very
final
briefly. Briefly, I also think there's a tremendous opportunity right now for business succession into cooperatives. I didn't speak about this, but this definitely might be helpful for you. If there is a small company, a founder is ready to retire, they can convert that to worker co-op, selling it to their members, selling it to their workers, selling it to the employees. Many great examples of small companies who are able to continue. They weren't founded as co-ops, but they can become so. And now at a time when we have a big generation that's retiring, it's an excellent opportunity. So thank you for the time to be with you all today. And Ingrid, it was great to meet you. I look forward to your final.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I have learned a lot about you, Cathy. And well, it has been an honor to participate in this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much for both of you showing up very early. If we go from a set European time zone, I know we have other people in the room who's also on different time zone. Please follow ECOnGOOD through our newsletter. We will have more of these ECOnGOOD conversations on other thematic areas. Follow us on social media. And if you have any ideas of what you think should be in this conversation, you're more than welcome to reach out at the communication team at ECOnGOOD International. It's me, Raul, here in Estrellita, and you can email us at communication@econgood.org. Ingrid and Cathy, once again, and also thank you so much for all the wonderful work you're doing. You definitely are pioneers in making this world a better place. We need that light in these dark times to have some good examples. So thank you, everyone.